our next discussion is about pornography. Now, consuming pornography may have implications on one's daily life, their relationships, in fact, their entire ability to function.
And recently, singer and Grammy Award-winning Billie Eilish spoke candidly about how pornography addiction impacted her life.
Eilish has opened up about her addiction and its negative effects since a very young age. She also added that to feeling devastated from excessive exposure to porn.
And this has led to mental damages, with the 21-year-old admitting to nightmares since some of the contents were violent and also abusive.
Now, make no mistake, addiction to porn is a complex issue. A range of possible causes cited include mental health conditions and biological factors.
And we now have clinical psychologist and sexologist Zoya Amirin to find out more about the matter and better understanding of the impacts of pornographic addiction from a psychological point of view. So, Mbak Zoya, hi.
Good morning.
Thank you for
Good to
coming.
have you back.
Now, we want to know, Mbak Zoya, what are the potential psychology risks or dangers of addiction to pornography?
Well, number one potential problem is a negative self-perception. You know, because how pornography represent themselves, it's way different. Like, this is one of an example. I once upon a time, I'm interview a porn star, right?
Okay.
So in their industry, it was like, I think it's 12 years ago. Well, the industry was like very rapidly
Growing.
Indonesian
growing.
porn star?
No,
Oh, okay.
in the U.S. of course.
Okay.
And then I was like interesting to, before I start the interview, I always ask like, how do you want to be mentioned? Are you like, you want to be like mentioned as a porn star, or
right.
what is that? And he's and the actors actually said something like that. I actually like to be called as a sex athlete.
Wow.
Okay.
Athlete.
And I was like, oh,
Interesting.
I'm not easily
Is
impressed.
it
but
a matter of endurance or?
I haven't heard that before.
Because before they perform in one scene in the pornography, they have to exercising the relaxation and everything's like that for like 2 weeks before.
Okay,
Wow.
so there's training to that.
There's a training to that, so it's almost impossible for us. Like for instance, some of our couples said like, okay, Mbak Zoya, I wanna, we want to improve our sex life and we want to watch porn, because we are adult and we are just like, consenting adult and we just like married and whatsoever. And I was like, no,
It's
because
hard to do that.
you questioning your sexual normality by watching porn.
Because it's not
who cares?
realistic.
Because it's not realistic. They have to exercising, relaxation, and all of this
Endurance.
stuff like endurance and to perform one scene.
Right.
One scene only.
One scene only.
Okay.
So it was like, it's impossible for you to watching porn, and doing it with your spouses and expect that, hey, for instance, like sometimes people make a comparison, for instance, like, oh, when I saw in the porn, like they just like this big, or the color is pink, why you are brown, or
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
you not
constantly
like this
comparing.
endurance, and that make you questioning that, is it normal? Am I normal?
But now,
It's normal.
now they have OnlyFans, right? OnlyFans is very realistic.
OnlyFans is very realistic, yeah, but what the thing with pornography or what people saying about sex is not actually what happened when you are in bed.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's true.
Pornography and whatever is that in in OnlyFans or any videos, they took off the vulnerability that we actually need in bonding, and actually a sexual connection in the real intimacy. They take out that.
Good point.
So.
Okay, so you've this is we mentioned this is an addiction, and basically, what is it that is the hook? That is what keeps people coming back for more. Why does this become an addiction for so many people?
This is very important that when you get addicted to something, anything,
Yes.
you can like addicted to
Caffeine for me,
sambal
by the way.
or caffeine or whatever is that, it's
High five.
actually triggering your dopamine.
Okay.
Dopamine giving you a quick gratification.
Yeah, that feel-good hormones.
Yeah, this is the kind of hormone that give you like, you always craving for more. because they rewire your brain and asking you for like, hey, I like this, and this is like, because it's quick gratification, of course they will asking for more and more and more. And the thing with addictive and the dopamine, we all need dopamine, of course, but at the right amount of size, because when we are like when we hanging out with friends, when we connecting with our spouse, we need the kind of dopamine like flirting,
But those are little small bits of
Is this the right amount of it? But if it's too much, you're going to infidelity, addictive and stuff like that, because they always like, oh, I just want to looking for the sensation of it, and it will impact your prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex, it's when your executive judgment is there, the moral, the understanding of is it right or wrong. If it's clouding your judgment, it's hard to make a lot of good decisions about your life, about your health, about everything else, about your relationship, if it's impacting there.
Okay.
And could I also argue that some people, you said that pornography is just not reality, but aren't people looking for that sometimes to escape to the world that is not their reality?
Oh yeah, it's true. I remember it's like we have a sex conference. This is when all the sex therapists was actually gathering and exchange knowledge about, especially about porn. The thing that we all realize as a sex therapist, that pornography gives you a certain kind of comfort that you not get from your spouses, because when you do you remember the movie Don John?
Don Juan, yes, Don Juan, Johnny Depp.
No, I don't remember that.
The what? So he was just like he can sleep with A-list kind of women.
Right.
He can dating and go to the bar and meeting a woman, and they just have like a great sex, whatever is that. Then after that, the woman leave and he watching porn. Because people think like, oh, when I'm watching porn, especially when I pay for porn, I'm not harm anybody.
Right.
I can afford it, and I'm not raping anyone whatsoever. But they actually forget, when you go to porn, it's kind of more harder for you to be into a real relationship.
Really?
After that guy who's actually having a relationship with a very sexy woman. I forgot who was that woman actually in the movie, but
he goes back to that, like that's what he's looking for.
After having sex with the girl, then he kept coming back to the porn. Because when you're porn, when you're with a real person, you know that you have a performance anxiety. Especially with male, with man. They would just feel like, oh, I have to impress her. I have to do like this. I have to explore and this and that. There's a lot of things happen in your mind. But when you do porn, like it take off another, your vulnerability, and you just like, this is like 2-dimension, and you can just like.
You're not being judged.
Not being judged. The comfort that sometimes make people like, okay, I think it's okay, I don't have to be involved with the real person, and it's really hard.
Now, I also want to know, Mbak Zoya, because I know a lot of friends consume porn. So, to what extent do they consider to be, normal consumption of porn? Are there any such thing?
This is a hard. It's kind of tough to answer, because first of all, you can see it because before you get addicted, you like it, right? And then you want it, and then after that you need it. Then the next thing you craving for it. That's addiction. So how do you know the line?
It's very gray area.
Like, I think this is like cool. Oh, are you sure?
Yeah.
Then the next thing you know that, oh, I want it, watch it. Like, I
But we
can control.
justify it. We say, no, but I'm okay without it. I just want it.
And the 12th program of any kind of addiction,
Yes.
the first step, they always say like, you are powerless over your addiction.
Okay.
So when you say that, oh, I can control it, I think you're already there.
Yeah, that's denial.
Okay.
Yeah, that's denial.
Face.
You
Okay.
can't control it. It's just like, just don't go there.
Right. So is this something that can be considered compulsive then? Is it a compulsive disorder?
I can say this is a compulsive behavior, but not necessarily a disorder.
Okay.
Because a disorder, you have a clinical treatment, and you have to drink a medicine and stuff
Right.
like that. Yeah, sometimes you can eat medicine because, you know, this is a rehabilitation for a porn addict and stuff like that. But because, you know, you have a social anxiety, you have a like false expectation about a sexuality in your body and about other people's expectation in that or in a social interaction, how to attract someone, communicate with someone. If your head is full with porn, most likely it's not necessarily like you have a compulsive disorder, but the thing is like you just have like a certain SOP, you know.
Yes, yes, got it.
Like this is a system, how to operate, how to attract it, how to get aroused and stuff like that. So, you know.
You're creating these habits as well.
Yeah, when you're creating this habit, this pattern, then when you get real relation to someone, you know the dynamic that you need to getting to know someone like very close and very personal, and that's hard when you like so addicted with porn and you already have your own pattern and you think like that's the only way to function.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. You know?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the thing that scares me also as parents, you know, how do we avoid such materials and prevent them from either direct or indirect exposure to pornography? Because we know that you know, children nowadays has so many access to so many information. So.
By the way, you mentioned an interesting point before our discussion that nowadays kids don't even have to access porn because there's a lot of stuff out there, excuse me, that are categorized as regular
as
movies,
porn.
but there is sexual content in it.
Soft porn.
Yeah, there's no way, but you know, you really have to give a sex education to your kids, like as young as possible.
That's the only way.
Yeah, that's the only way. When you have like a newborn baby, the first thing that you need to do is give them consent. Like, okay, mommy, asking permission, you know, to changing your diapers, you know, changing your clothes and stuff like that. That kind of thing make them realize that, hey, people need to ask. Even my parents, I get used to asking for consent when I'm like very young. So they get used that their body is actually like, you know, it belongs to them, you know, and our body is not a democracy, right? Nobody can like give a rule that we are rule. So this is the body is a monarchy that we are actually the rules of our own body and stuff like that. So if they have an exposure of pornography, the best thing we can do is ask, like, how do you feel when you saw that? Because I remember like a couple of like years ago, there's I think it's a elementary school gathering, and there's a like accidentally they being exposure to porn for like 1 minute, and the parents was really so angry, and the company was like invite me, you know, to educate the kids because they're being traumatic because a lot of people like screaming and stuff like that. And when I asked most of the kids, they actually more scared because of the screaming of the adult.
Oh, okay.
That
the reaction of the adult.
The reaction of the adult. They don't really understand it. I was like, yeah, I don't understand it. But the parent was like so angry because they think like, hey, we try to taking care of our kids, you know, get away from that, and this is like an education. Then suddenly there's a porn in there, you know. And you also remember, I think in there's a one time in South Jakarta, like the commercial TV.
I remember.
Yeah,
it was in Mampang, right?
Oh,
around that area.
Yeah.
Wijaya.
And they show off the pornography, and people were so angry. And after that, I think the Salat Jumat just ended at the time.
Oh my God!
Not
great timing.
Yeah, and they just like hitting it with the rock or something, right? But and they was like they are so concerned about the effect of it, and I was like, yeah, the best thing you can do when your kids get exposure or something like that is talk to them. Like, how do you feel? What do you think when you saw something like that? Including when you're watching with your kids and there's people kissing, you just like act
awkward.
Natural.
My daughter knows what to do exactly. She does this. She's trained very well. But she knows there's something going on that she shouldn't be watching, but we also don't dissuade her from knowing adult things.
Well, I think you need to give them understanding that what is a normal affection.
Okay.
You can show it with your spouse also in front of your kids, but don't do something like, okay, don't watch it, don't do that. They will have like a certain knowledge that it's weird to be affectionate.
But that's
Like
the
it's
thing.
wrong.
The thing is,
Yeah.
the reason my daughter's been taught to shield herself from scenes because that's Hollywood. That's
Yeah.
what you're seeing. I don't want her to have these false expectations of, oh, when a guy and a girl date, this is what happens. They have this amazing, whereas we explain to her that this is just a movie. This is just actors. And
Yeah. You better do
but
that.
it's a little bit just so we're more transparent in that way.
Yeah.
But also she's still very young, too young to be watching it. But at least we don't hide her from the fact that this is something that you'll be watching one day.
Yeah. Or at least you can say like, did you, you can explain like, mommy and daddy were kissing and hug because,
We love each other.
we love each other,
Yes.
And you cannot just say like, oh, if I love someone, it's okay for me to hug someone. Sometimes kids asking questions like
Right.
that, right?
That's
It was
true.
like, depends.
When you're an adult.
Don't worry, my
one
daughter
day-
usually answers ew, so don't worry.
Oh, that's good.
So we had this, I mean, the whole reason we're having this conversation is because of Billie Eilish. And she did admit that this is an addiction. This is an addiction that she was exposed to at a very young age. You mentioned that there are cures for this. In fact, some people might even have to take medicine. What are some of the ways that one person can kind of get rid of their addiction of porn or perhaps reduce it? What are some of the activities they can perhaps do, alternate activities? Or if it's quite heavy addiction, do they need to be on medicine and what would they be taking?
Oh, yeah. First of all, like admit it.
Okay.
Because
Coming to
that's
terms.
That's the first
a lot
phase.
of people who's actually on denials.
Yeah.
And they actually like, if they have spouses, sometimes they actually fighting with their spouses, asking for like more privacy because they really want to watch more porn, right? So first of all, it's the hardest part, even for us to do intervention, as a sexologist, because they don't want to admit that. Most likely their spouse coming to us and say something like, okay, we need a sex therapist, and it's like, okay, so where's the one who actually have problem, like at home, and that's tough. So if they coming and admit it, they know that they have to do the hard work, especially when they're meeting a sexologist like me.
Right.
Because if they meet, usually I will like take them with the psychiatrist too, especially if they have like a tremor on their head.
really?
If they're just like so compulsive, the behavior is more compulsive. They are so nervous because they always like connecting everything with the idea that they found in the pornography, how to interact with people that, normally human is not easily like that to get aroused or to get attracted
That's so
sexually.
sad.
And it's hard for them to understand what's going on anymore. They have less sex, especially for male, they have like erectile dysfunction. That's even
Really?
more,
So
yeah.
that's like almost opposite of what you would think, right? Like,
Yeah, so if you think like, oh, if I watching porn, then I will have like more sex and a lot of position. No, you have less sex and you have like an erectile dysfunction. You don't have a self-confidence anymore. You have a sexual anxiety performance. So that's not really a good idea. So if you want to asking for help, usually a sexologist like me, the clinical sexologist, with the psychiatrist, we have to working hand to hand together, and you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent, and like asking for help. We don't have like a lot of like rehabilitation for the porn, but I'm working toward a rehabilitation for porn addict and a sex addict right now. I hope it will like happen in sometime soon this year.
Yeah,
But because it's almost the same like the drug addict, but the thing is, this is using internet porn these days, and you cannot just stop the internet because internet can be used for other things too.
Of course.
So it's
Useful
tough.
thing.
you
Of course.
know.
And and I would say that these days, access is just available everywhere.
Yeah.
In fact, I
And
would
free.
argue, I would argue that if you even have an Instagram account, you can find your ways
That's
to
right.
access. Look, I get
Oh, Twitter
comments
is
all the
easier.
time from these kind of like, they're
That's
bots,
true.
right?
That's
they're bots,
true,
but
yeah.
they're bots that will allow you to
Yeah,
access
yeah, yeah,
porn
yeah.
accounts later somewhere else on the internet as
Yeah.
well. So back in the old days, what would you have?
Your
Like, somebody's friend's father's magazine collection probably that comes close,
True.
right?
Yeah, we
Compared
have to
now.
really looking for it. And
Exactly.
Back then,
Yeah.
this now like you can just
You
like
can get
sit
it
down
from
and
It
it
comes
pop
to you.
up, it's come
Yeah.
to you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
giving to your lap like that. It was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Now, Zoya, how do you know that you need help, and when is the time that you realize that you need to go to a
Let's
sex
say like
therapist.
you've already gotten past the denial stage.
Yeah.
You say, hey, I got a problem.
I think something
I
is
have a
wrong
problem.
with me.
Usually when they know they love someone very much and they want to repair the relationship, but
Okay.
the feeling is not there anymore and they get angry easily, they are so sensitive and they don't want any social interaction. Usually they not really interested in get social anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they don't want to get out of the room. They have like a very urge to always like holding your gadget and
Yeah.
open it and watching it most of the time.
Because in pornography, every social interaction leads to sex.
Sex,
So
yeah.
in physical interaction.
Yeah.
So to them, the world is probably really bland. Like, oh, this is all we do. We're just talking. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's not stimulating enough for them
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
Yeah,
right?
Interesting.
because the part is like addiction, and after that escalation. Escalation is just like, oh, I want something more like weird or dangerous or whatever is that. Then after the escalation, they just like desensitization. That's the worst part. Because in desensitization, everything just like you normalize everything.
Yeah.
The abuse, the harm things, the
So dangerous.
immoral things. You just like, oh, I think everything is okay. It's
Right.
not okay.
Right.
Then the worst part is acting out. Like, okay, I want to try it because everything that I watch doesn't work for me anymore. So I need to acting it out. That's going to be a problem.
So any suggestions for those out there that basically are trying to avoid falling into this trap? Because like you said, it is all around us these days, especially for us with kids. You can't cut off access to the internet. You need social media. So any tips and advice for those?
Yeah, for everyone who actually want to stop doing that, I actually suggesting a healthy masturbation without porn. People will say like, what is that? There's no way healthy masturbation without porn, right? Most likely people will looking at me in a weird way like,
Okay.
are you kidding me? Like, yes, you can. Especially if you have a spouse, you can sharing your sexual fantasy and actually
Yeah.
more sexier that way.
Right.
And you're connecting, you're bonding.
Communication.
Because, pornography hijacking your intimacy in bed.
Yeah.
Because you don't need any other, features or
Yes.
anything in your bed. You just need you and your spouse organically to attracted to each other and bonding and be vulnerable to each other because there's love come from when you feel vulnerable and safe at the same time and you can share your sexual deepest fantasy to each other and they can take like, oh, okay, this is something we can talk about. Then after that you can discuss about, okay, what's our plan to make it more like fun.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing that can replace human connection
Yeah.
compared to like connection with a gadget or a laptop, right?
true.
But thanks so much for this conversation.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that I believe is very important to have because I think many people out there will probably find it very difficult to
Yeah.
face themselves and admit that they have a problem. So hopefully we're able to shed some light on this issue.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here today.
Yeah,
It's really
thank
great
you.
to have
You're
you.
welcome.
Have a great week.